The Kings are so back. This season has started, and the Kings started it off in the only way that they know how to, and that is by scoring a lot of points, 130 to be exact, holding the Jazz to only 114, a modest 114. But the Kings pretty much dominated from start to finish. They never totally put away the game, never extended the lead to 25 plus. Had a short time of, I think, being up by 23, but, I think that was something the Kings struggled with last year was putting away games. But it never got close near the end. So they kept it, in that 15, around 15 point lead. And so I'll take that because I never had to get nervous near the end. Fox never had to, turn into fourth quarter Fox. And it was just nice for all the preseason overreactions to be wiped away in one win, including the Harrison Barnes overreactions where he scored 33 in this game, 27 in the first half. He loves an opening day. Scored 36 a couple of years ago on opening day, which I think is the record for the Kings, and almost broke his own record here. But the Kings offense just looked like it never missed a beat. I think when we see this team reach its full potential, this is not going to be the starting lineup. And I think we need more defensive players in there instead of, a Herter or Barnes or maybe both. But while we have this starting lineup, we know that it can outscore anyone. And, even the fifth most potent offensive player can go for 33, if you want to say Barnes is kind of the fifth scorer in the starting lineup. And that's what's going to allow the Kings to be able to be patient until the right deal becomes available to then move all in. But for now, this team is still really good. And it was just the Jazz who are not projected to be a good team in the West, are not projected to make the play in. But they were a team that last year put up a fight in every game. Have obviously Lauri Markkanen, who's really good. They have an extremely big team, not just in the front court, although they are starting two 7-footers in Walker Kessler and Markkanen, and then they have a power forward in John Collins. But then Taylor Horton Tucker provides matchup problems. And so I was a little worried about the size coming into the game. And the Kings definitely struggled a little bit on the glass, especially to start the game in the first half. But they honestly gave it right back. There was only a one rebound difference in terms of offensive rebounding. It was 15 to 16. And then I thought as the game progressed, the team rebounding got a little better, helping Domas in there. There were more guys helping him. Keegan was poor rebounding in the first half, and then he got a lot better. And I think that's something that we see a lot with Keegan is at times he's not a good rebounder and he's letting guys get offensive rebounds. And then he like locks in. Mike Brown yells at him. He locks in and he's able to really contribute on the boards. We saw the Jazz play a lot of zone defense in this game, which was really interesting to me because it just didn't make any sense. One, because it just wasn't working. So why did they stay in it for so long? I don't know. But two, the number one thing that breaks the zone is getting someone into the middle of the zone to catch the ball and then play make from there. And so Domantas Sabonis is the perfect player to do that. He's just going to flash straight to the middle of the zone, catch the ball, and then either try to go right at whoever's in the middle and score, or he's going to make a pass off someone cutting or to a 3-point shooter. And so, yeah, that was working really well. Even when JaVale McGee came in, the Kings were still finding ways to score, and it was just because they were shooting threes and making threes, because that's what the Kings do. They're a really good 3-point shooting team. So it was just odd for the Jazz to continuously go into a zone. It made no sense to me. But of course, we'll take it. The offense, especially in the first half, was on fire from 3-point range. Barnes started 8 for 8 from the field, and he was knocking down all the three balls. Keegan made a few in the first half. We had Sasha knocking him down. Chris Duarte came in and knocked him down. So everyone was kind of knocking him down in the first half, which obviously helped a lot in getting the lead for the Kings. But I do think that there were some solid defensive moments for this team. Like I said, there was times where they struggled with the size of the Jazz. So second chance points were a problem, but they weren't they weren't scoring as easily on those second chance points as I think we've seen in the past. The Kings usually when they give up an offensive rebound, it's just an automatic bucket, and they were also doing a great job of protecting the paint. They had 8 blocks in this one, which that was as many blocks as they had in a game all last year. Sabonis had 2 of those. Keegan had 2 of those. Monk had 2 of them. McGee had 1. And they didn't always lead to us gaining possession. Like both of Keegan's blocks went right back to John Collins and then he scored. But it's still good to see the rim protection being there because that's something this team definitely needs to improve on from last season. So that was a really good sign. I also loved Fox's defensive effort in this one. He had a few steals. Somehow this only says he has 1 steal. He definitely had more than 1 steal. He had at least 3, including the one that led to the crazy Monk uh, poster on Chris Dunn, I think it was. And so obviously there's going to be a ceiling on this team defensively, like I said, with the starting lineup that we have. But I think there were really good signs in this game on the defensive end. There were some guys that weren't so good defensively, like Kevin Herter, who just kept losing his guy on cuts, was allowing so many wide open layups. It was really bad for him. He also didn't have it going offensively. Just kind of continuing what we saw in the preseason. There were also a lot of moments of getting confused on if they were switching or not, and a lot of that was between Barnes and Herter. And, so I don't necessarily know who to blame on that because I don't know. There has to be a game plan going in. I don't know what the game plan was, and so I don't know who's at fault, but somebody's at fault. Guys aren't communicating or something. I don't know, but it does seem like the common denominator in all of the breakdowns is Herter. So it seems pretty likely that it is Herter that is at fault for most of those. Although there was one that people were blaming him for that definitely wasn't his fault, where Markkanen got an open dunk. And I think there were a lot of moments in transition where the Kings didn't do well defensively, just not matching up or not helping off of their guy when there's a Jazz player going straight to the rim with no one guarding him. Like it feels like in transition the Kings are like, "All right, we got to match up," and they like find their guy and then they can't leave him for some reason because like it's transition. We can't leave our guy. I don't get it. It leads to a lot of open looks inside and that was where the Jazz hurt the Kings a lot in this one. I thought the bench looked really good, and this was even without Trey Lyles, who had a mild calf strain or something like that. And so we saw Vezenkov in this one in Lyles' spot, and I thought Sasha was pretty good. He came in, immediately hit a 3, had 8 points, 2 steals, 2 rebounds. He's obviously not the greatest defender, doesn't have the best mobility, but I do think he is a smart defender, and it always helps to have another shooter coming off the bench. JaVale McGee looked great. He made a couple of nice hook shots, including one where he started at the 3-point line, went all the way in for a nice like sky hook over Walker Kessler with the shot clock expiring, which was something else. He obviously adds an element to this team that we just didn't have off the bench last season or at all last season because we don't have it in the starting lineup either, which is someone who is going to be that big of a lob threat and be able to block shots like he does. And then we had Duarte, who, I mean, I even said in the preseason, like, I would start Duarte over Kevin Herter. And I still believe in that, especially after this game where Duarte, I mean, he's shooting better than Herter right now. Maybe that won't last, but Herter is a very streaky shooter. Maybe Duarte is more consistent. I don't know about that, but he's just a much more physical defender and just much better across the board defensively. I really love what he brings this team. And then you had Monk distributing to everyone off the bench with 7 assists. Didn't have the best time scoring. Neither did Davion, but they were doing a good job of setting guys up. And so the bench looked pretty lethal. Like they extended the lead even when the starters went out. And we got a deep team this year. Of course I would like to be deep in other ways like wing defenders, but we still have a lot of guys that can contribute in positive ways even if it isn't the most balanced team. And we scored 130 points and Fox went 6 for 18 from the field. He ended with 18 points and just never really got it going. He wasn't really getting to his mid-range and knocking that down, so and he never really had to. And in the first half, Sabonis didn't really have it going either. I think he only had 9 points in the first half. Keegan knocked a couple down early, but he didn't even really have it going in the first half. It was just all Harrison Barnes in the starting lineup, knocking everything down. I mean, like I said, 27 points, so other guys definitely don't have to do that much. And so that is just the balanced attack that this team has. We did see Keegan, though, take John Collins off the dribble, just straight up, got in isolation, and went right at him in the middle of the floor. And so that was fun to see, and he got an and one off that. And I think Keegan in that instance, and then Barnes really the whole first half, we're doing a good job of exploiting the weaknesses of this Jazz team. Because obviously, like I was saying, the Jazz are a big team, but that means they're not going to be that great guarding on the wings. They have Markkanen who has to guard either Keegan or Barnes. And so Barnes was going at guys like Kelly Olynyk at times and the other two guys I mentioned, just getting shifty, using his speed to get inside and then knock him off balance and finish. And that's what Barnes is great at. And then obviously he had the 3-point shot going, so that helps a ton. I was thinking once it hit halftime and the Kings just didn't really miss much from three in the first half, I was thinking the game was going to get closer in the second half because the Kings would start missing threes more. And they did, but the game never got really close. And I think the Kings did a good job of not just settling for threes without driving to the hoop and drawing guys in first, which I think a lot of times we see with this team, just once they get a big lead, they get complacent and start chucking threes. And I didn't think they did that in this game. They were still getting open shots, even if they weren't making them at the same rate as they were in the first half. It's still big to keep generating those shots by getting inside. Other than Domas, no one was really finishing inside for the Kings. Which is tough against a team with Walker Kessler and the size of the Jazz, and the refs kind of letting it go inside. But they weren't really drawing fouls either. The Jazz had like 10 more free throws than us, but they continued to attack and kick out for threes, and so that was really why the game never got close. When I feel like last season it would have gotten close. And it always did, especially against the Jazz, who I feel like it's always a good game when it's Kings Jazz, and it's always a good ending to the game. But not in this one, which is a good thing. And it got super slow in that fourth quarter. Like from 8.5 minutes to go to like the 6 minute mark, it felt like it took half an hour. There were so many fouls. I know the Kings had at least 4 fouls in that time. There was a bunch of reviews like the Harrison Barnes, Lauri Markkanen double foul that Mike Brown challenged and lost. and then we got one less free throw, which was an interesting one. But the Kings didn't let that, the game slowing down get to them, and they just continued to do what they did and didn't really need to amp up the defense because they kept scoring, which is that's definitely something they need to do. Is just keep scoring down the stretch even when they're up big, because they can give it all back in a very short period of time. So even when there's only like 5 minutes left, no lead is safe and they have to keep scoring. I think the main differences that I saw in this game as opposed to last season that I really hope aren't just for one game are, one, the rim protection and Sabonis playing super well inside, but also Keegan and just everyone really getting involved in trying to protect the rim. And that has to be like a team oriented thing. The second thing would be just not settling for threes without getting it to the paint, even if you're up big. That was a huge thing that I hope continues. And then three, just the physicality defensively, especially from Fox and Duarte. I really liked what I saw from him. I think Barnes should get credit for playing Markkanen pretty well. And then other than that, I just hope that Keegan continues to be aggressive. Like the shot wasn't falling all game, but he went 5 for 13, got his 15 points, and I think the way he went about it looked a little different than last season. And I just want them to continue to feed him the ball and put confidence in him, because there'll be some games like this, but then there will be other games where his shot's falling more and they need to get him the ball more. And obviously in this offense, it's not usually just feed one guy. Like Barnes was hot, but he was getting everything within the flow of the offense. But still, you can get a guy more touches if he's hot, and we will see that from Keegan in the future. And I thought he had a solid game, but there's definitely going to be more from him this season. I think what really excites me about this team is you can see how many good players we have. But then I also think about how much better this team can be once we balance out the roster more. Once we get better defensively on the wings. And this is all inevitable. Like, the front office knows all of this and they are just biding their time to make it happen. And maybe it'll be this year, maybe it won't, maybe it'll be next offseason or the next trade deadline. But like at some point, this team is going to be better balanced and be even better than we are now. And we still look really good right now. Our next game is on Friday at home on national television on ESPN against the Warriors in a rematch of that playoff series. Draymond will not be available for the Warriors in that game, which is obviously a big loss for them, but they got CP3 now. And I think Fox, he mentioned wanting to be one of the best two-way players in the league, and I think I saw that effort defensively from him in this one. And so he's going to be the guy matching up against Curry, at least at the start. And so it'll be fun to watch them go at it. But I think this is one of the games where the Kings need to go smaller. I don't know if Trey Lyles will be available. If he is, then that's great. So we can play him at the 5. But if not, I do think just more guard-heavy lineups will be used. And I just want to see a lot of Davion and a lot of Duarte to guard the guards of the Warriors in Curry and Paul and even, Thompson. And it's just got to be a team effort on the glass against Looney and against guys like Kuminga. But a great start to the season for the Kings. Obviously, much better start than what we had last season where we started 0-4. And I'm just so excited that this season is finally here. So anyways, that is it for this episode of The Real Report. And I will be back to recap that game against the Warriors. Peace.